All righty, let's do this. I've always said that there are many, many ways to create better workplaces, but if you had to choose just one tool, just like one place to start, one thing to do to create a better workplace, it would be more positive feedback. And I believe that the most powerful way to actually do that in an organization is to start with the managers. As always, start from the top, right? It just makes sense. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to do that. How exactly do we train our managers to give more positive feedback? These are the topics that I have planned. I'm going to talk about why managers absolutely should give positive feedback, why that's amazing, and why it's terrible when they don't. And then we're also going to talk about why they very often don't, because a lot of managers do not give very much positive feedback, or in many cases, no positive feedback at all, or in also in a lot of cases they only give negative feedback, and that's terrible. And we're going to talk about why they often do that. Then we're going to talk about how to train them to do it. I have some experience in this area. I've been doing this for ages. And then I'm going to give you some specific ideas from great workplaces, because there are workplaces out there who are training their managers to do specifically this. All righty, let's do this. I hope I have coffee. I hope you have your favorite beverage ready. Let's talk about this. And as always, ask me anything in the chat. There is a comment window. If you're watching this live, there's a comment window on the webinar page. Write a comment there, and I'll be happy to answer that at the end of the webinar, at the end of the video. If you're not watching this live, write a comment on the video, and I'll get back to you on that. Why does this topic matter? Well, it's very simple, really. Positive feedback, as I said, is an incredibly effective tool for creating better workplaces, and yet a lot of companies don't, and a lot of managers don't use it, and I think that's a shame. We know from the research that positive feedback is great. It has a lot of positive effects. I covered this in a previous video on positive feedback, like more generic video on positive feedback, so I won't go into too much detail here. In that previous video, I'll link to it in the webinar materials. I talked about some of the specific research that shows all these benefits, but just so you know, research shows that when people get positive feedback, they are more productive, they're in a better emotional state, they are happier. Positive feedback feels good. They're more creative. It turns out that when you give somebody positive feedback, their mind is more open to new ideas. They perform better on various creativity tests. They are more motivated. If you give them a tricky task and you give people positive feedback, they try harder to complete that task. It turns out that they're more resilient to stress and burnout, probably because, again, positive feedback boosts your happiness, and feeling good makes you more resilient to stress and burnout. People perform better under pressure. There was a fascinating study where they gave people positive feedback, and then they had to present in front of a panel of judges who were trained to look very negative and skeptical. And those who had received positive feedback before that task performed better. And it creates a better employer relationship when we give people positive feedback. That's all proven in the research. There's one more that I just want to mention because I think it's so important, and that is that positive feedback helps us build our sense of self. It helps us maintain a stable identity. There's some fascinating research in what's called recognition theory that shows that if you receive no positive feedback, or if you receive only negative feedback, no positive attention at all, then it's almost impossible to maintain a stable sense of identity, a stable sense of yourself. And it can really break people down psychologically to never be recognized for the good they have, to never be recognized for their good work or their positive qualities. So this is why this shows that positive feedback in general is super important, especially in the workplace, and that positive feedback from the boss is extra important. Why? Well, these are some of the reasons I could think of. First of all, I mean, it's clear that managers are role models, right? They set the tone for a lot of behaviors and a lot of attitudes and culture in the workplace. So if the managers never give positive feedback, then that attitude is likely to spread throughout the organization. If they do give positive feedback, that attitude is likely to spread. We also know that managers, I mean, that's just a basic fact of life, right? Managers have influence and power over people. And if they never see the positive aspects of people, then that power they have over employees can be seen as a threat, because that person apparently only sees my mistake. My boss only sees my mistakes, my flaws, my errors, and never sees my good sides. And that can make this sense that now this person who only sees me in a negative light has power over me. That makes that relationship a threat. Whereas if that person also sees my positive sides, that relationship, that power dynamic is more positive, less of a threat. Um, Positive feedback in the workplace also promotes a positive focus. And the thing is that we know that negativity bias is very, very powerful in all aspects of life. We just know that people are more attuned to negative experiences, negative circumstances, annoying people, bad things in your environment are just more clear and present in your attention span, right? You just have more of a focus on anything that's negative. We know that from a ton of research. And that can be especially prevalent in the workplace, because in many workplaces, we never talk about the things that work. We never talk about the things that go well. We only talk about the things that go badly, the things we haven't yet done, where we're behind. But if we train ourselves, and especially if bosses train themselves to get positive feedback, it can help us strengthen our focus in general on the positive aspects of the workplace, the things that are going well, the things we're good at, the things we're happy about. And that in general can boost our sense of happiness in the workplace. If we're only focused on the negative, it doesn't matter how many positive things we have at work, because we're just going to ignore them and only focus on the negative. We know from the research that when managers give positive feedback, it builds relationships with employees. You cannot really build a relationship with a person who only sees your bad sides. I mean, that's just impossible. So when managers also give positive feedback, that helps build a positive relationship between employees and managers. We know how important that is. And also, I mean, I'm not saying we should only give positive feedback. Negative feedback is also important. I talk about that in my previous video on positive feedback. Um, but here's the thing: if you remember to give positive feedback when people do something right, they're more likely to listen and take it in and act differently if you give them negative feedback when they do something wrong. Whereas if you only ever give them negative feedback, they're less likely to take it seriously, because they'll think, well, this person never sees anything good I do. Why should I listen to their opinion? So my point here is that positive feedback is amazing. It's super important, but also sadly, and especially important when it comes from the manager, but also we know that it's super, super rare. There's a lot of research on this. I mentioned some in my previous video on positive feedback. We did a study a few years ago on bad days at work. We asked people how often you have a bad day at work, and then we asked them, so the last time you had a bad day at work, what made it bad? And the third most important factor in that study was a lack of praise or recognition for the good work that I do. Um, so we know that people are crying out in the workplace for more positive feedback. And I personally, from my experience, can't tell you how many people I've talked to who say that, I personally feel I do great work, but my boss never notices. I never get positive feedback from my boss. But if I make one mistake, I am instantly punished. That attitude is very common in many, many workplaces. So if praise is so amazing, why is it so rare, and why do bosses very often not give any positive feedback? I think there are three main reasons. First of all, there is a very common misconception in life in general, but also especially at work. I think that people only learn from their mistakes, right? There was somebody circulated a quote on LinkedIn the other day from Ed Sheeran, of all people, saying, "You learn nothing from your successes, you only learn from your mistakes," which is complete and utter nonsense. You can learn so much from what goes right, either things you do well or things other people do well. I mean, of course, you can learn from your mistakes, and we all should, but you can learn so much from your successes, so much from your wins. And by analyzing, okay, this project went really well. Why did it go really well? Well, it went well because we asked this other team for their help, and they helped us, and that was great. Went well because we did this piece of research that allowed us to discover this tool, and using that made that kind of thing, right? Um, so, but there is a very common misconception that people learn only when we correct their mistakes. It is wrong. There's a lot of learning theory that actually shows that people learn better when you reinforce the positive steps they take, rather than when you constantly punish their mistakes. Do you know how they train orcas? I mean, orcas in captivity, it's a terrible thing. We need to close down all of the seaquariums that have orcas. But do you know how they train orcas in these places? You can't really punish an orca, right? If you try to make it do a trick and it doesn't wanna, you can't, right, like spank it and say, bad orca, stop that. It won't really care. So it's constant positive reinforcement. Every time the orca does something that looks like the thing you want to do, you give it a fish. And then the next time it does, you give it another fish, and then you get closer and closer and closer, and you give it another fish, and that's how you train orcas, and it works. It works on people as well. Um, so that's certainly one reason why bosses often don't give positive feedback. Another reason is that here's the thing: giving positive feedback is cheap, right? It doesn't cost a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of time to go up and tell somebody they've done a good job. But what it does take is an interest in other people and a focus on other people. I mean, if you want to praise somebody for doing a good job, it means that you need to see that person. You need to see the good work they do. You need to have an interest in that person's welfare, in that person's happiness at work. And a lot of bosses just don't have that. I'm not saying they're bad people, but it's just a fact that a lot of management training, a lot of MBAs, a lot of business orthodoxy these days is very focused on results. It's very focused on, metrics and goals and KPIs, and very little focused on the human beings in the workplace. Um, and this attitude means that it become a boss with this very results oriented focus will have a hard time praising employees because they don't really focus on the person. It's almost like they don't even see people; they only see numbers and spreadsheets and projects and profits. Um, so that's why I say about, and I've been saying this for ages now, that we need more managers who are focused on people, who are focused on relationships. Because as a manager, at the end of the day, you don't really manage machines or spreadsheets or projects. You manage people, human beings, and you should be able to relate to those people. So that was the second reason why bosses don't give a lot of positive feedback. And the third reason is outlined in this article, in this research, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. Um, Here they ask the question, why does criticism seem more effective than praise? Though it isn't. Again, I want to be very, very clear. Criticism is not more effective than praise, but a lot of bosses think it is. Why might that be? Here's their conjecture. Let's say you're a manager, right? And your employee, John, there's this daily task he does for you. And how well he does it varies from day to day, right? Some days, like on Tuesday, John knocked it out of the park. He did a 10 out of 10, amazing job. Maybe the Monday after is like, not as good, only a 5 out of 10, right? And of course, you're monitoring John's work and you want to give him some feedback. So you of course noticed that on Tuesday, John knocked it out of the park. He killed it. He did such a good job. So you notice that. And then you go on Tuesday, you go to John and say, wow, I saw the way you did the job today. Excellent job. You rock. You are killing it. Well done. And then the next day on Wednesday, you notice that John doesn't do it as well. Only a 7 out of 10, which is about his average for all the tasks over all of these days. So you might form a mental association that, hey, wait. I praised John on Monday for a great job, and then he did a worse job on Tuesday, and then he did a worse job on Wednesday. Um, you might get the idea that whenever I praise people, they actually do a worse job after. Maybe they're slacking off. Maybe praise makes them, not take the job seriously. Maybe criticism is more effective. In fact, let's say that on the following Monday, as I said, John does not do a very good job on this task. Only 5 out of 10. And you go to John and say, hey, listen, John, I know you did your best, but here's the thing. You did this wrong. You did this wrong. Could you try fixing these 3 things for the next time you do this task? And then on Tuesday, he actually does a better job. He's back like an 8 out of 10. And again, a manager who sees this might form this unconscious association or conscious that, okay, whenever I praise people, they do a poor job. Whenever I give them criticism, they do a better job. But that's not what's going on here. What's going on here is not that the feedback is having this effect. It's regression to the mean, right? John has an average performance of about a 7 over all of these days. So if you criticize, give positive feedback when it's going especially well, there's every chance that it will go back to the average the day after. If you give negative feedback when he does it badly, there's every chance it will go back to the average performance the day after and look better than it did before. Um, so that's in this article. I think it's fascinating. I think it's very good suggestion theory for why some managers might have this idea. Again, I just want to say that we need both positive and negative feedback in the workplace, but we can't do it with negative feedback only. It can never stand alone. We need more. I would actually say that we need to get better at creating positive feedback in the workplace, because there's plenty of negative feedback already, right? Um, so my contention here is that what we need to do is create more positive feedback at work. Um, I will say this: feedback in general is important, and maybe the worst thing you can do to people is never give them any feedback, good or bad. Yeah. Okay, so that's why the three reasons, three theories for why managers currently don't do it. How do we teach them to do it? And this is my bread and butter. This is the kind of thing I do. So here are my ideas for how we do this. First of all, we can train them. I mean, any other skill we need people in the workplace to know, we train them for it. So you could have like internal workshops, internal trainings for your managers. If you have like a management training for new managers in your organization, this could be part of the training, teaching them to give positive feedback. Um, I mean, all the other skills we want people to know, we don't leave those to chance. Why should we do it with things like positive feedback and happiness at work? And this is exactly the kind of work I do. I've done so many trainings for managers. I just did one for a huge French aerospace company for 40 of their managers. And this is absolutely part of it, training them on understanding what makes people happy at work, and specifically how positive feedback boosts that. Um, so that's definitely one thing. Train them to do it. Another aspect is to show them the benefits, because for a lot of managers, this will seem like fluffy. It will seem like abstract. Positive feedback, I'm sure it's nice, but why would I do that? And if you can, like I said, the research shows that it has specific performance benefits, and happy employees perform better if you give people positive feedback. They do a better job. So show them the benefits and show that this is not just nice; it's actually something that's likely to boost their results. Have role models higher up. I mean, that's just how human beings work, right? Social proof. And if let's say the CEO is really good at giving positive feedback and does that in highly visible ways throughout the organization, then that attitude, that culture, those behaviors are likely to spread. Let me mention an example. There's an organization a governmental organization in Copenhagen. They're in charge of all antitrust enforcement. And they have a monthly all hands breakfast, first Monday of every month, where all the employees get together. And there's like information from management, yada, yada, yada. And as part of that, the CEO of the whole agency goes on stage and celebrates three good things that have happened. So celebrates three teams or individuals for the good work they've done. That's a brilliant example of something like that and how it can spread from the top. You can measure this. You can measure if managers give their employees feedback, positive feedback, and you do this in two ways. You can do this in your job satisfaction survey. One question could be, do you feel like your manager sees and appreciates the good work you do? Boom, right there, you can see it. And another way you can do it is you can actually measure not how employees perceive it, but whether managers actually give positive feedback. So if you have an online system for positive feedback, and there are like a million of those these days, I'm going to mention one in a second. You can go in there and you can see, do managers actually use this online system to give their employees positive feedback or not? And anything we measure in an organization is likely to get attention. That's something you can use that as a weapon. It's a double-edged sword. You have to be really careful with what you measure. But something like that, have a leaderboard. So here, this manager has given out like 5 pieces of positive feedback every week on average this month, and this manager gave nothing. That's going to make it highly visible. That's going to create pressure on people to actually improve. You can celebrate the good examples. This is a highly, highly powerful. But you can find examples of like, this manager was really good at praising their team, and here's how they did it. Here's how all the creative ways they get positive feedback. Here's what this team experienced. Here's what came out of it. Here's why this manager is awesome. So celebrating the good stories is also a great way to get people to change behavior. We know that getting people to change behavior is the hardest thing in the world, right? But these are just some of the tips that can make it work. Um, and I think it's very important to make it easy. Lower the bar for people. Show them that giving positive feedback is not rocket science. It doesn't require like a degree in psychology or anything. It's just all that you got to see the good work people do and tell them about it. And if you can give people like specific tips to make it even easier, and I'm going to give you 5 of those tips in a second, then that will increase the likelihood that they actually act on it and actually do it. And my final tip for for how to get managers give more positive feedback is to hire or promote managers who already do this. Because some people, there's just part of their nature. They're just good at seeing the good in other people, and they have no problem telling them, thank you so much for helping me. Here's why this, your work made a difference. Or, I notice you're always like very diligent in your work, and I really admire that about you. Some people that's just part of who they are. And I think those people in general tend to make amazing managers. So it's going to be way easier to hire somebody or promote somebody to management who already has that skill than to take somebody who's only focused on numbers and systems and try to teach them to give positive feedback. Cool. How do we, like I said, specific tips. I have 5 tips for how to teach managers to do this. Make it easy for them. Make it as like concrete and action oriented as possible. And this is specifically the thing we teach in our management workshops. We give them some of these tips. First of all, we talk about what you can praise, because I think we need to expand people's minds a little bit around this, because many managers are like, I praise results. If I have a team of salespeople, I praise the person who sold the most, or the person who's exceeded their sales target for the month. And that's great. That's great. I mean, celebrate results, absolutely. But if you only celebrate results, and some people do, you're limiting yourself, because there are so many other things you can praise as well. For instance, effort. Let's say that you have this team of salespeople, and one of them has worked really hard, came up with a lot of cool new approaches, but just for whatever reason, just didn't reach their sales target this month. It's maybe a downturn in the market, maybe their region is just a little tougher. I don't know. But for whatever reason, they did not meet their sales target, but they worked really hard. You can still praise the effort, because effort over time is likely to lead to great results, right? Maybe this other salesperson actually exceeded their sales goal. Maybe they just got lucky. Maybe one new big account just walked in the door randomly. It was actually due to no effort of theirs. It's just pure luck. Sometimes that happens, and that's why I think effort is worth praising more than just results, right? Living company values. If your company has a stated set of values, and most companies do, I think it makes a lot of sense to give people positive feedback when they live those values. This is going to make the values may way more actionable and way more easy for employees to relate to than just here's a poster with our company values, here's a mouse mat. I talked to the CEO of a Danish company who said that a company's values are dying when they give out mouse mats with the values on them. I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. One of my favorite examples of this is a company called What If in London, who have 5 company values, and you can nominate coworkers for living up to those values throughout the month, and then every month management picks, like, for each value they pick one team or one person who's lived up to each of these values. Brilliant, super simple, and very action oriented. Here's what these values look like in practice. Here's how we live them. Here's how we act on them. I love that. Helping others. Oh my God, being helpful, not just being focused on my results, but helping my coworkers get great results. That is absolutely worth praising. And if you have employees, if you're a manager and you have employees who do this, please give them positive feedback, because they actually, in my opinion, create way better results than those employees who are just in it for themselves, right? Again, you have this team of salespeople. There's this top salesperson who's just in it for themselves, only focusing on themselves. They can steal a client from somebody else on the team, they will do that. And then you have this salesperson over here who's, their results might not be as good individually, but they're helping everybody else boost their sales results by, sharing tips and knowledge, by supporting them, by giving them good ideas, that kind of thing. That is absolutely worth celebrating. And those people deserve positive feedback. And finally, personal qualities. Um, People don't need to. Yeah, I mean, you can catch people doing something, and then you can praise that, and that's amazing. But you can also praise people's like personal qualities. Oh my God, you're such a nice person. You have a great sense of humor. You're super helpful. You're very innovative. Um, uh, 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 um, and I think that because then it goes to not what people do, but who they are, and that kind of praise can be very, very impactful. And please don't doubt for a second that positive feedback, like a word of praise at the right moment, can be something people remember for days, weeks, months, years after. It can honestly can change people's lives. So these are some ideas. That's like tip number one. Giving managers like specific suggestions for what they can praise, again, to make it easier for them. There are many ways to give praise. I mean, you can just go up and tell people they've done a good job, but I like using online systems because that way it's trackable and we can see which managers actually do give praise and which managers don't. There are a million of these systems. I just want to mention that we have one and it's amazing. It's called HeartCount. HeartCount is a system for measuring how happy people are at work once a week. Every Friday, people get a notification. They answer 3 simple questions about their week. Boom, they're done. And they can see the data for themselves and their team right after. So it's instant feedback for people. And as part of HeartCount, when you're filling out these 3 weekly questions, take like 15 seconds. You can also give somebody else positive feedback, and you can see all the positive feedback you've gotten and given, and so on. Very, very effective tool for promoting positive feedback and for making it easier for managers to give positive feedback. One specific tip that I really like is for managers to give themselves a recurring task to give somebody positive feedback. I have an online to-do system that I use, and in that if yeah, again, I'm not a manager, I'm not managing anybody, but if I were, I could give myself a daily task maybe to say, give somebody positive feedback. And if I'm the kind of manager to whom that doesn't come naturally, again, for a lot of managers, it's not part of who they are to give positive feedback. I will get a daily task, and that might remind me to do it. And I think that's great. Could be like twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, once a day, whatever fits my schedule, whatever fits my personality. But that would remind me to do it. And the more you do it, the more natural it will come to you. I heard a great example. This is from Jack Mitchell. It's in his book. Love Your Employees. Sorry, Hug Your Employees. He wrote a book called Hug Your Customers, and then he wrote another book called Hug Your Employees. He ran a chain of very high-end clothing stores in New England. And Jack, I met him. He's an amazing person, and he said that every morning he'd put 10 quarters in his right pants pocket. And every time he gave one of his employees positive feedback, he'd move one of the coins to the left pants pocket. And he couldn't leave the office before all of the coins had migrated over to the other pocket. It's like a simple reminder to give positive feedback and give a lot of positive feedback. That's tip number 3. Tip number 4, give positive feedback in writing. I mean, it's great to go up to somebody, and say, "Hey, I noticed that report you wrote yesterday, spot on. I love the intro. It's very clear. There, positive feedback in writing. I love the conclusion. Excellent job. Thank you so much." Or in meetings, like in front of other employees, thank you for arranging this meeting. I thought the agenda was very clear. I think we got a lot of stuff in this meeting. You led it very efficiently. Thank you so much. You can give positive feedback in front of others, and I like that. But negative feedback you only give in private. I just want to make that very clear. But positive feedback in writing, like sending somebody an email. Again, thank you so much for your help on this project. Thanks to your help, we were able to deliver this a week early to the client, and they were so happy. I think is brilliant. Or try this handwritten note. Yep, seriously, not break out a piece of paper and a pen, write them a note in handwriting and send it to them or whatever. This can be something people really appreciate. And the cool thing about getting when you get praised verbally and you hear it and then you like in one ear out the other and you sort of forget it. When you get it in writing, you can save it. I actually have a folder in my email program in Gmail. I have a folder called feedback. Every time somebody sends me an email about how much they loved one of my books or one of my talks, I reply to the email and then I drag it to that folder and save the email there. And I'll occasionally read those emails because it feels good. And that's the cool thing about getting positive feedback in writing is that you can save it and it will feel better more times than just hearing it, which might just last once. So that's a simple thing. Oh, it also might be easier to give positive feedback in writing rather than going up to somebody and having to tell them. When you write it down, you can actually sit and think about what you want to say and formulate it just right. And the fifth and final tip is when you give praise, if you can connect it to the workplace's purpose, I think that's amazing. Not just, great job, great report, but talk about the impact that report had on the team's work or on the client's situation or the bottom line or whatever. Show people that, your work was not only great, but actually made a difference. Specific example, this is from a government agency in Denmark that's in charge of paying out indemnation money to people who have been maltreated in hospitals, medical maltreatment, medical malpractice. And they were super busy. These are highly skilled doctors and lawyers, that kind of thing, have to determine, was this patient treated wrongly? How much compensation are they entitled to? And the manager wanted to appreciate all the good work they'd done. So he had a cake made with the amount of money the team had paid out in the last 6 months. So not just, you've done great work, but this is money that went out to people who are entitled to compensation thanks to your great work. That's a way to show that your work actually makes a difference. How can you do that? In our workshops, we also talk about how not to give positive feedback. We talk about please don't be fake. You have this task, you need to give somebody positive feedback daily, and you just go up to somebody and tell them whatever. You don't really mean that, mean it, but you just say it. Never do that. People see right through that. We talk about the sandwich model. That's the one where, if you want to give somebody negative feedback, give them positive feedback first, then hit them with what you really want to say, and then give them positive feedback in the end. Never do that. It's an awful model. There's a ton of research on why that sucks. And then rewards, you want to reward somebody for their amazing work. So you give them like a bonus or some kind of reward, some kind of I don't know, a voucher or a gift card or whatever. Don't. There's again a lot of research from motivational theory that shows that when you reward good performance, it actually leads to lower motivation and worse performance in the future, because it puts the focus on the reward and not on the feedback or the actions that people had to take to earn that feedback. So be very, very careful with that. If somebody's earned a bonus, give them a bonus, but don't tie the bonus to specific positive feedback. So those are some of the tips we give people, very specifically managers, and managers can absolutely learn this. Or I should say some managers can learn this. and some can't. It's very, very clear that some can't and some won't. Some are just like, nah, yeah, no, positive feedback sucks. If I give my people positive feedback, they'll just slack off. I don't want them to do that. So yeah, there are some bosses who can or won't learn this. And what do we do about them? Yeah, I think we should get rid of them. Honestly, they should not be managers. Make them be regular employees again, if that's an option, or just get rid of them. And it's not that I think not giving positive feedback is a fireable offense necessarily. It's just that I think it's a really good litmus test, right? If a manager can't even be bothered to see the good work their employees do and praise them for it, in my opinion, that's a really good indication that this manager does not give a damn about their people. And those kinds of people, those kinds of managers should not be managers. We need managers who actually care about their people. As I always say, if you don't like people, you shouldn't lead people. It really is that simple. So that's my tip for that. So let me sum up here. I think positive feedback is incredibly important and incredibly rare. We know that from the research. It takes no time and it costs no money, but it does take practice. And it's something we need to consciously teach managers, because it's not a part of management orthodoxy. It's not a part of any MBAs or business trainings that people go to. And managers can and they must learn to do this. And if they can't or won't, get them out of there. I'm gonna send you if you sign up for the webinar, I'm gonna link to a webpage with more information, like articles, links, the slides for this presentation. You can also find that in the video description. And of course, most importantly, if you want to know more about this, book me to come speak. I'm amazing. Thank you so much, and I will now take your questions. Alrighty. I hope you found that interesting. Let me see if any questions came in. We have 2 questions. First question: are you really saying we shouldn't give rewards along with the praise? How are we going to make people appreciate the recognition without some form of reward? And I just want to make this very, very clear. People will appreciate the recognition more without a reward tied to it. Now, I'm not saying we should never reward people. I'm not saying we should never give out bonuses, that kind of thing. But the thing is, whenever we tie a bonus to the praise, the focus is on the bonus, and this can so easily backfire if the reward is not what people expected, if the reward is less than what somebody else got, if the reward is somehow something they're not interested in, they can very quickly become so focused, so consumed with the reward that they forget all about the positive feedback, the sincere positive feedback you're trying to give them. So rather than give somebody like, thank you so much for the amazing work you've done on this project, here's a gift card for whatever. I wouldn't do that. I would say I would give them sincere praise, and then at a later point, I might surprise them with a gift card, just like out of the blue. There are really so many ways this can backfire. Some of the worst right now. Oh my God. I've seen like people posting online, hospital workers, for instance. They've been working really hard. Their hospital is understaffed. They're overworked. They're stressed. And I'm not kidding. Management gave out mints, like one individually wrapped mint per employee, and they called it an encourage mint. Thanks for your hard work. That is not a reward. That is not a bonus. That is a slap in the face. That is a joke. Also, the pizza party where you show up and there's like one half-size slice of pizza per person. Again, that's a joke. And there's no way that so honest, sincere, meaningful, positive feedback without a reward is definitely better than that kind of a reward. So yeah, we have to be so careful when we tie rewards to anything in the workplace. And again, ton of research showing that rewarding people for achieving goals reduces their performance in the future. Yeah, we know that, and their motivation for accomplishing those tasks in the future. Yeah, I've been saying that for years. But yeah, a lot of people are still very, very tied up on giving rewards. Yeah. Another great question. What's the best way you've seen a company train their managers to give positive feedback? I've seen a lot of companies do this, but one of my favorites right now is a Danish company called Carl Ras. And they are unique in that they claim they don't have a single bad manager, no bad managers in their company. They were just voted Denmark's best workplaces, Denmark's best workplace. And you know that Denmark has the highest levels of happiness anywhere in the world. So being the best workplace in Denmark really counts for something. And the way they've achieved this, of course, they do a lot of cool things to achieve this status, but they really focus on having good managers. And let me read from their. That's in Danish, so I will translate on the fly if you will bear with me. They say we want present and skilled leadership. It's one of their keys for success, and they say we have no bad managers. And their CEO and owner says that a failing result or things that don't quite work out, that won't keep me awake at night. That's part of running a business. What will keep me awake at night is if I see signs of bad management. And of course, the way they achieve this is in, again, who do they hire or promote to management positions? They almost always promote from within. and they make sure to hire people who have these skills, and then constant training on how to create good managers, on how to be a good manager, and constantly measuring it. And currently, it's something like 97% of employees say they trust and like their manager. And part of that is, again, positive feedback. That is what they train for. So this is one of the most comprehensive examples I've seen of really focusing on good management on, and specifically on managers that make their employees happy at work. And I love that example so much. Beautiful. I hope you found this useful and that you got some tips for how we can get our managers to give more positive feedback. Stay happy.